It's a lovely day in sunny England, which means that I'm going to do some Burda tracing now. Okay, hi guys. So as I said, we're having some really beautiful sunny weather here in England, and I'm doing my tracing of the vintage Burda pattern. I want to take advantage of the fact that I seem to have a lot of activation energy around this, and just getting into it. So I've just decided to pick something from this 1969 one simply because the subsequent ones, the 1970s ones, I would sew every single thing in those issues, but I really want to try and sew this. So in terms of choosing a pattern, it was quite challenging because I actually realized that I need to approach these as a beginner sewer, not as the advanced seamstress that I consider myself to be. And that is because I just don't want to bite off more than I can chew. I want to pick a project that I'm most likely able to finish. And when I finish it, I can build up momentum because I'll feel good that I've actually managed to sew something from these vintage issues. Okay, so what am I going to sew? So I decided to sew 8107. And that's because when you look at it, this is the sort of pattern that's going to show you whether the drafting is on point, because it's got those tight fitting armholes, right? And those can be quite tricky to get right. And so if I sew up the size that I think I am, and this is okay, then I can confidently go forward knowing that even with more complex patterns, I won't have any problems. Plus, it's also kind of got a boat neckline, and I love a boat neckline. It's so sweet and it's so elegant. So that is the pattern that I'm going to do. I have looked at the table of sizes, and they're slightly, just ever so slightly different to the modern day Burda ones. So according to this table here, I'm sort of like borderline on my bust, because I've got quite a small to non-existent bust. Whenever you see me looking like I've got a bust, it's the bra that I'm wearing. But when I don't have a bra on, I'm more or less flat-chested. And to drive home the point, I'm going to show you what I mean. So I'm not wearing a bra today. So as you can see, this is where my waist is, of which it so happens I don't like wearing bras, but that could be another post. But for this dress, I will be wearing it with a bra, obviously. So my measurements have me, for my bust, they have me in the 36-40. And then for my hip, it's in the 42 side. So the rationale is that this dress pattern, which is, I sew it just now. Here we go. Okay, so it is this one here, 8107. Is just a really simple dress with some Dior darts that come off of a princess seam line, and it's got some back shoulder darts. The hip area is free because it's an A-line flare, so my hip size doesn't matter so much with this dress. So I'm going to be tracing out the size 38-40, which luckily is the size that's available, which is one of the reasons why I chose this one. So that's the one that I'm going to go for. I'm going to make it using a toiling fabric, and it's just a bleached white fabric that I've had for years, and it's the fabric that I've used before when I've dabbled in pattern drafting. So that is my plan. The other problem that I have realized pretty much straight away when I've been looking at the pattern sheets preparing to trace is that these were printed on the old-fashioned newsprint. Okay, I'm aging myself here because like I'm of an age where I remember getting newspapers, and the type of newspapers that they had this sort of like really rough texture to them. It was a very distinctive one. You knew that this was a newspaper paper, and not quite so like with magazine paper. But it does mean that it is prone to damage from being rubbed against. And this is 50 years old, effectively. And so I have to be really careful how I choose to do the tracing. I can't just do my one bam, thank you, ma'am, that I'm used to doing with the modern day tracing papers, because those ones seem to have a finish on them. They don't do the thing whereby if you kind of like rub against them, you can kind of feel like something's happening to the paper. So I'm gonna use some wax transfer paper, and then I'm gonna see how I get on with that, because I obviously don't want to damage these. Because hopefully, fingers crossed, I will have a grandkid who's into sewing, and then they'll get this and they'll be like, yeah, my grandma used to sew. I don't have a sewing heritage like that, so I can only fantasize about passing it on to my future descendants, because I don't really have any ancestral sewing things. Okay, so we're just going to pause it right there for now, and we're going to dive into tracing the vintage Burda. I wish I drank alcohol at this point. I could have like a gin and tonic or a glass of wine to kind of like, woman up and go Burda. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to record it, because that will force me to do it, because I'm actually recording it. Okay, enough procrastination now. Let's get to it. Okay, so I've cleared the kitchen counter, because I've decided that I'm actually going to do it on the kitchen counter, because I think that will make things easier. So my kids are around, and it's scream-free Sunday, so there might be a lot of kiddie noise, but that's just how I roll. Let me just show you some of the intricacies of a vintage Burda pattern instructions. Okay, so we know that it's on pattern sheet B, and then it also shows you that these are the pattern pieces that you have to cut out: number 42, 43, 44, 45, and 46. And it's showing you that this is the line that you have to trace for this dress in the size 38-40. So this is one of the few dresses that also has another size, so it's also available in a 44. And if you were tracing the 44, you'd need to trace these pattern pieces, and you'd be tracing this line here. So quite different to how it's done now. I'm going to show you how to find these pattern pieces on there. Okay, I also wanted to show you that the pattern sheets are quite small. If you can see. Normally I can't fit an entire Burda pattern sheet on my kitchen counter, but that's small. That is pattern sheet B. For comparison, I'm going to get a modern day pattern sheet. Okay, so here you go. I've got the pattern sheet from February 2020. That's underneath, and that's the pattern sheet for July 69. So it's quite smaller, but it's got a heck of a lot more patterns packed into it. So I had thought that I'd be able to use the erasable highlighters on these pattern sheets, but that's not going to happen because of the quality of paper that was used for printing these pattern sheets and their age. Adding heat to them does not seem like a really good idea at all from a preservation perspective, and I do want to preserve these for my future generations. Hopefully, if they don't sell my things off after I kick the bucket. So I'm going to have to do it the good old-fashioned way with my baking parchment, but I'm going to have to be really, really delicate and not just sort of rush it around like I usually do. But yeah, I would love to hear from anybody else who uses vintage. And I'm talking about 1960s here, age type. If there's another way of tracing them that doesn't compromise the integrity of the papers, I would love to know. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and take my time very softly with it. I'm going to sharpen pencil, getting my tools ready. Okay, so when we look at our instruction sheet, we know we need to find pattern piece number 42, which is the front. So what you then do is you're going to go along here. Okay, so found them down here. 42 is over here, 44 is over here, and 43, 45 are over there. Okay, so I'm going to start by doing 42. So we have 42 here. So 42, if you just put a straight down, boom, got you. And you can see there, that's what I have to trace. Oh my days, I can already feel my eyes screaming. Okay, right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab my baking parchment and I'm going to start. See these? I have to wear these when I'm about to do something that's strenuous on my eyes. And this counts as highly strenuous. I just traced my first vintage Burda pattern piece. I did it, and here it is. I even saw the bust stuff. So the facing lines, you have to then trace these off yourself. I gotta admit, it wasn't as bad as I had hyped it up in my mind to be. It's a lateral skill. I think if you can already trace from a line of jumbled up, from a sheet of jumbled up lines, this is, I guess, the difference between doing a 5K run and then doing a half marathon. It's the same principle. It's running, but you're just doing it more intense. She says, after just tracing one pattern piece, let's just continue and see if I feel the same way after I finish tracing the rest of them. Okay, so now I'm going to do the facings. So this is the pattern piece and this is the line for the facing. So I've just folded this over and I'm going to trace out the facings that I need. Okay, so we've got the back pattern piece and we have the back facing. So in order to trace out the facing, you have to close the dot and trace the facing. So this will be what this neckline will look like once you've sewn up the dot. And I've also got the back facings traced out, and this is the front, and it's got a Dior dot, and then you've got the side front that's going to attach there. And same thing as well, I had to trace the facing like that. So this is the benefit of sewing without seam allowances, because you can just butt this up and then that's your pattern piece right there. And then we've got the front, the skirts. So this is the skirt back, and then this is the skirt front, and this is the fold. This is going to be the center front seam that's going to create, and then this will create the pleat that you sew at the front. Okay, so I've done it. I've traced my very first ever vintage Burda pattern from 1969. So yes, I can say, boom, I've done it. I've sewn with vintage Burda. Just kidding. So I'm done with my tracing for today. It wasn't anywhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. I hyped it up significantly in my head, but if you're used to tracing stuff, you definitely do get into the flow of it. My concerns about the paper that they printed on was completely unfounded. Everything has been fine. I just have to be a little bit extra careful with them compared to the other ones. I'm glad I didn't go off straight away and use the erasable highlighter. I'm not going to be able to get any sewing done today, but I'm hoping to get this sewn up over the next week or so. So it will probably be next weekend that I come back with another report on sewing with vintage Burda. So yeah, exciting stuff. I hope that you've enjoyed this post. If you did, give it a big thumbs up down below. If you haven't already, do subscribe. I put out sewing related content at least twice a week. And until I see you next time, happy sewing. Bye.